Alright guys, hope you're doing well. As promised, today we're going to be diving into what these political parties stand for, but not just the what, the why they stand for, and whether these beliefs are good or bad, so that way you can formulate your own viewpoint. I split this up into different days, so you should see a PowerPoint that says political parties' core beliefs explained day 1 and 2. I'm only going through day 1 in this video, that way I can go a little bit slower. Make sure I address all the points that I can and maybe be as clear as I can with this stuff. So that way when you're doing your assignment, everything is good to go for you guys. So we'll start talking about these beliefs. We're going to do 2 beliefs a day, and then you have an assignment at turnitin.com to do for those beliefs. But let's dive right into it. So as we learned yesterday, there are 2 major political parties in the United States. You have the Republicans and you have the Democrats. Now, I'm going to be talking about both of these today, so if you need a brief introduction for the Republicans, and i.e. you didn't pay attention yesterday, here's a little bit of information for the Republicans, as well as here's a little bit of information of the Democrats and what they look like today. Now I'm going to transition to talking about each issue one at a time. We're going to do 2 issues today. We're going to start with taxes and talk about what each party stands for, and whether or not that's a good or bad thing and why these political parties are doing this. That way you can make your own judgment call. At the end of the day, guys, I'm not going to tell you guys how to think. That's something that you guys have to decide. That's free will. I can present a very compelling argument. You might see some of these viewpoints and be like, wow, I would never side with that because that makes perfect sense. And that's a-okay. You might see like 2 political parties' perspectives and like both aspects of it. That's okay. You guys have free will. You guys decide. I've made my own viewpoints. You make your own viewpoints, etc. Now, that doesn't mean because you choose differently than me that you're automatically right and that all our viewpoints are the same. It's just, it's how we view it. No, absolute truth does exist. If I believe 2 plus 2 equals 4 and you believe 2 plus 2 equals 5, it's all right that you believe 2 plus 2 equals 5, but that doesn't mean you're right. You're still wrong. You're just entitled to that viewpoint. So, nor am I arguing saying like, hey, you choose your own viewpoints because they're all correct. That's very much incorrect. There is absolute truth in this world, and some things are true and some things are false. I'm just pointing out you guys have the right to be wrong if you choose the wrong things. I'm not saying what those are. Use your own logic and you'll figure it out. But without further ado, guys, let's move on and let's start talking about these beliefs. Let's start with the Republicans' beliefs on taxes. So as you learned yesterday, Republicans believe in lowering taxes across the board. And the basic premise or mindset for this is that if you lower taxes, and if you don't know what taxes is, it's when you work a job, you get your paycheck, but some of it is taken out and given to the government so they could pay for stuff like the military, they could pay for stuff like Social Security, they could pay for stuff like firefighters, whatever it may be. The idea for the Republicans is if you lower taxes, meaning you pay less taxes, it's going to promote economic growth, meaning the economy is going to get bigger and better. Now, is that a good or bad thing, Mr. Shoens? And you're going to see this quite a lot as I go through this. Now, the theory is sound, because think about it. If you have more money in your bank account because you pay less taxes, you're more likely going to spend that money that's in your bank account. Like if you find out in your bank account you have an extra $1,000, you might be inclined at that point to spend that $1,000 to get a new iPhone, and that way you can make your hilarious TikTok videos. And then that ultimately helps the economy because at the end of the day, Apple gets a sale, and then Apple can use that money, make a better iPhone for next year, and the economy is going to grow, grow, grow from that. So the concept behind lower taxes is that if you have more money in your bank account, you're more likely to spend it, and thusly the economy is going to grow. Ultimately, in order for an economy to grow, people have to buy and sell things. Now, is it a bad thing, Mr. Shoens? Well, it depends really how you look at it. I mean, if you're looking at it from like a perspective of like me, it's like, man, I would love to have more money in my bank account. Being facetious, obviously. Here's 2 main concerns with it. There is a chance people could hoard their money in their bank account, so instead of spending it to promote economic growth, they just hold it in a bank account. Although I will tell you that that is very seldom to be the case because people, when they find extra money lying around, they tend to buy that iPhone to make better TikTok videos. So that's a very rare case. And you'll find out in economics next unit that it doesn't even really matter anyways, because if you leave money in your bank account, the economy still grows because the bank spends your money in your bank account. But you might be thinking like, Mr. Shones, that's not true. I have a bank account and that number stays the same. They don't spend my money. No, they spend your money. We'll learn more about that in economics. And thusly the economy grows. Uh, Another main concern with less taxes is it does equal to less government programs. So government programs that some people might need would not be funded at that point. Not that everything won't be funded, obviously. It's less taxes. It's not saying no taxes. But there obviously wouldn't be as much money for government programs, which could be a good or bad thing depending on how you look at it. Now, what do the Democrats believe when it comes to taxes? Now, Democrats believe that taxes should be higher, and especially on people of higher income. More tax revenue will equal more welfare programs, more government programs, all that different stuff. Obviously, the government needs money in order to do the things government wants to do. Is that a good or bad thing, Mr. Shones? Now, the logic behind it is that obviously, if you don't know what tax is the way the government makes money. So when the government wants to spend money on like the military and want to spend it on like Social Security and all that different stuff, it needs money from people's income. Um, so with that being said, if there was more taxes, that means there'd be more government programs funded by taxes. Um, to be fair, what you want to do with that money at that point is obviously up to a discussion. So, long story short, if you view it this way, more taxes would equal more government programs. Now, is it a bad thing, Mr. Shones? Well, obviously, less money in your pockets equals less money you'll spend, obviously, which means the economy would suffer because of it. At the end of the day, countries that have higher tax brackets, in general, tend to have weaker economies because people aren't buying stuff and businesses aren't growing, ideas aren't coming because iPhone, if it doesn't sell enough iPhones, is not going to make another iPhone at that point. You get the idea. You'll learn more about it in economics. So higher taxes tend to hurt economies. Plus, if you think about it, that tax money that you give the government, they get to decide how to spend it. Now, they might spend it on a great thing, like if it's something that is involving, like, I don't know, healthcare for the elderly. I mean, that sounds cool on paper. But what if it's for something like an Argentinian clown school? Obviously, at that point, that money that could have been in your bank account that could have helped out your family and made you happier is now making some clowns in Argentina a whole lot happier. So you get the idea at that point. Now, moving on to the next point for today, Republicans on the economy. So the Republicans believe in something, a concept known as laissez-faire, which is French for let things take their own course without interfering. Now, that's something we'll learn a little bit more in detail when we get to economics, so a lot of this might be foreshadowing for the future. But in general, the Republicans don't believe the government should have much interference with the economy. So they're against stuff in general. I mean, sometimes it's necessary. Against tariffs, stimulus packages, increasing minimum wage, all that different stuff. It should be noted, like right now with the coronavirus going on, there's Republicans trying to pass a bill to stimulate the economy. So you get the idea. If there's like a pandemic, they'll break from tradition to help out the economy. Is this a good or bad thing, Mr. Shones? Now, Thomas Jefferson would have been a huge fan of this. You'll learn in economics next unit that the less government involvement usually translates into much more economic growth. Countries that have governments that run their economies tend to do a whole lot worse than free markets, which we'll talk about more in detail later. And that's what the Republicans believe in the free market system. Just leave it alone. Don't let the government get too involved. He who leads least leads best. Is it a bad thing, Mr. Shones? Now, the two biggest criticisms for this is A, that it could lead to companies taking advantage of the consumer. Obviously, when it comes to economics, a company is a huge, huge entity worth billions of dollars, and we aren't. So there might be a situation where a company might try to take advantage of you if the government's not there acting as a police officer. I'll tell you in practice in economics, you'll find out this is very rare, and here's the basic logic behind it. If a company takes advantage of you, like let's say a company, instead of sending you the Jordans you ordered, they send you a bunch of New Balance shoes, which there's nothing wrong with New Balance shoes, but there's a significant price gap between the two. If you order Jordans, obviously you're expecting Jordans. If that company burns you, that's really, really bad. But what you would do is obviously not buy from that company ever again, and you probably tell all of your friends, and that company would lose a lot of money at that point and eventually go bankrupt. So the concept of government not being involved would lead to companies taking advantage of you. In practice, you won't see it as much because the ones that do take advantage of you tend to go bankrupt very quickly. Now, what do the Democrats believe on economics? They believe in something known as Keynesian economics, which if I was telling this to a 12th grader, they would know what these things, Keynesian and laissez-faire, mean. I understand you guys are in 7th grade. I will go more in detail when we actually get to a unit on economics and how money works and all that different stuff. But basically the concept is pretty simple. When the economy is going down, the government should be there to jumpstart it. Or if you take the most extreme end of Keynesian, the government should outright run the economy. Now, is that a good thing, Mr. Shoens? Now, our government does practice some ideas from Keynesian economics. If you've seen the latest stimulus package, which was made by Republicans, so just to kind of put into perspective, even Republicans can take some aspects of Keynesian economics. We're right now trying to stimulate the economy because the world economy has shut down because people aren't buying and selling as much as they used to because they're all staying at home. Hence the thing when I said earlier that economies grow when people buy and sell things. Why do you think gas is going down? Because people aren't traveling, so people aren't buying it. Anywho, so it can be good in those situations when like a literal world pandemic can happen, but is it bad, Mr. Shoens? If you go too far, you're going to end up exactly like this picture. Think of it this way. The government relies on the economy to make money because the economy ultimately leads to people making income, which is ultimately taxed, which is ultimately how that government gets that money. And if the government was feeding that economy, would it not be like this power strip right here? A power strip plugged into itself? You can do it for a little while, but it won't work long term. At the end of the day, if the government's putting taxpayer dollars into an economy to pay for income so it can ultimately get that money back through taxes, eventually it's just going to slowly run out of money until it eventually has no more. And like this power strip would be completely useless in the current state it is. So depending on how you view it, that could be the huge criticism behind the Democrats' belief on economics. That's the end of the first day when it comes to these beliefs. I hope you guys have enjoyed the little bit thorough explanation. There's an assignment for you guys to do. Make sure you turn it in at turnitin.com. Tomorrow we'll keep up with these political parties and move on to other beliefs and why they believe them.